Hello everyone, good day. Welcome to another video lecture in art appreciation. This time my topic is music. So this video lecture will focus on introductory concepts about music. So this is for general education students to basically understand music as an art form and how valuable music is in the Philippine context. So before we discuss the different types of music and how music is in terms of status here in the Philippines, let me give you first the definition of music. So music is the art of arranging sounds in time. So we know that there is a specific timing followed in music. So there is also specific arrangement, and there are elements present in music as well. And these elements include melody, harmony, rhythm, and timbre. And these elements are organized to produce a specific musical composition. So this time, let me introduce you to the different types of music. Now, these types of music that I will be tackling are not only exclusively existing here in the Philippines, but also in the rest of the parts of the globe. So there are types of music which are heavily influenced by specific cultures, let's say Hispanic music and also Latin American music. And we also have music coming from the African Americans, which heavily impacted also the quality of music in the modern times. So let's begin with the old one, the classical music. This is serious or conventional music following long established principles. Now, the principles here refer to the arrangement that is followed, and usually classical music are lengthy musical compositions because they have certain elements present in them, and there are also certain principles that are being followed in terms of arrangement. So classical music may be further classified. First one is the so-called cantata, which is a work for choir or chorus and usually with an orchestra. So if you could see in the picture shown on your screen, you could see here an orchestra composed of not only singers but also of individuals who play different kinds of musical instruments. So when you say cantata, the music that the choir plays is classical music. Okay? And usually there is someone who conducts the playing or the arrangement of the composition. And then we also have the concerto. It is a long piece of music, usually in several movements for a solo instrument and an orchestra. Now, if we are to contrast cantata from this one, concerto, concerto is actually a type of classical music wherein there is someone who plays an instrument solo. That means there is someone who becomes the center of attention in the orchestra. So besides the one who conducts the orchestra, we also have someone who plays the instrument solo. So for example, in the picture that you are seeing on the screen, we have here a lady who plays the violin, and she is the solo of the orchestra here at her back. Now, I am also including some links here that you can watch so that you will better understand each of these types of classical music. And then we also have the madrigal. It is a piece of music for several singers in which each singer has a separate part and may sing different words from other singers. Now, we know that if you are in a choir, you are classified based on your vocal quality or vocal reach. Okay? So, in this case, when you are in a madrigal or a choir which sings this type of classical music, you are or you have a specific function, you have a specific role in the singing of a certain song. So here, every singer in the madrigal or in the choir has a specific part. Okay? They have separate parts and it depends on their vocal reach as well. And then we also have minuet. This is another type of classical music, which was originally a dance that became a piece of instrumental music. So here there is also an accompaniment of different kinds of instrument, but usually these are stringed instrument. And then originally this was a dance, but then later on turned to a form of classical music because of the accompaniment of the instruments used or being played. And then we also have the nocturne. It is a short piano piece with a quiet, reflective mood. Nocturne means night piece. So a nocturne is basically a short. It's just a brief piano piece. So basically, it's piano that is played by the one producing the music, and usually it has a soft tone to it because its goal is to make sure that it provides a reflective mood towards its listeners. And nocturne means night piece, so this explains why there is such a need for the reflective mood in the playing of the instrument. And then we also have the oratorio. This is a large work for a big choir or chorus or even two choirs, several solo singers, and an orchestra. Now, if we are to contrast this one with the first two that I presented a while ago, the cantata and the concerto, oratorio is somewhat like a combination of these two types of classical music. The primary reason for me to say this is that oratorio is composed of many individuals who are engaged in singing and playing of musical instruments. So if you notice here, there are two choirs and then there are also several solo singers. Unlike with the cantata wherein there was only one solo singer who sings a part in the music. And at the same time, there is also an orchestra to back up the playing of the instruments. And then we also have the Passion, an oratorio based on the biblical stories of the suffering, death, and resurrection of Christ. So, what sets this apart is the theme of this music. So, if a music or if music focuses more on the suffering, the death, and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, then it's this type of classical music called Passion. And then we also have Serenade. So here in the Philippine context, we have its version called Harana. So it is a piece of music intended for evening performance. So in the Philippine context or in the Philippine culture, we use serenade to pursue to pursue a woman or a lady. Or in our local language, it's called harana. And then we also have sonata. This is a piece that is played rather than sung, but mainly a long work for one or two instruments with several movements. For example, we have the sonata of Beethoven. Now, who doesn't know Beethoven, right? We know that there are specific arrangements combined with a combination of different musical instruments. For example, we have the piano and the violin. Now, when they produce or these two musical instruments you produce music, then basically it's a melody to the ears of the listeners. So that is sonata. Okay, usually a long work of combined two instruments with several movements when they play the musical instrument. So it makes the playing of the musical instruments more complex. And then we also have this one called symphony, another type of classical music, which is a long work for orchestra, sometimes including a chorus and solo singers in several movements. So this is somehow similar with um, oratorio. What makes this totally different is that it's a long work of orchestra. So there is focus on orchestra, and sometimes in the presentation or in the playing of the music, it already includes a chorus, okay? And then there are also certain solo singers who sing a part or a portion of the presentation. And then, apart from the classical music, it's also vital to know what country music is. Now, we know that country music was popularized by the Western countries. Country music is music that developed from Southern American folk and Western cowboy music in the rural regions of the Southern United States in the 1920s. So automatically, when we think of country music, we are thinking about cowboys, ranges, because that is where, or that's basically the root of country music. So one good example for a country musician is Kenny Rogers. who was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2013. Now, if you want to know more about this musician or singer, we have the link here. And then we also have electronic music. This type of music began about 1942 when Pierre Schaeffer put up what is believed to be the first electronic music studio using a mixture of recorded normal sounds, variable speed tape recorders, phonographs, and microphones. So there is the use now of technology in the production of music. So basically, the music is produced electronically and with a combination of different media. So one famous example for a musician or an artist who produces electronic music is of course the popular DJ in the USA. We have Calvin Harris, also known as Adam Richard Wiles. So he is a record producer, singer, and songwriter. And then we also have jazz music. At the beginning of the 20th century, African American communities in southern areas of the United States invented jazz music, which is a combination of European and African music traditions. Now, just imagine how upbeat the music is when European or Hispanic culture is combined with African music traditions. So that's how jazz music sounds like. And one good example for this is, of course, the ever famous Frank Sinatra, also called as Francis Albert Sinatra, who was often hailed as the greatest American singer of 20th century popular music. And then you also have Latin music, which heavily influenced some of the musical compositions that we have now, not only those that are played globally or in the global charts, but also some music that we have here in the Philippines. It originated from the broader Latin world, mainly from Latin America, with fusions by Latinos of the United States, as well as genres from European countries such as Portugal and Spain. So we have here Richie Valens, who's known as Richard Steven Valenzuela, who was an American singer, songwriter, and guitarist. Now, we also have a lot of Latin singers in the contemporary times. And if you notice, there are already musical productions wherein there is a combination of both Latin or Spanish words and English words. So basically, that is, or these musical productions are heavily influenced by Latin culture. And then we also have the pop music. So pop music describes music that evolved from the rock and roll revolution of the middle 1950s and continues in a definite route today. So even until now, even here in the Philippines, we still listen to and enjoy pop music. So of course, one good example for Western pop musician or artist is Lady Gaga, by name of Stephanie Johan Angelina Hermanota, American singer, songwriter, and performance artist. And then we also have metal music. Metal music is characteristic of powerful and loud bass drums and aggressive electric guitars. It was developed in the United Kingdom in the 1960s and early 1970s and also in the United States. Now, if there is heavy shouting and the singing of songs and then loud bass drums and aggressive playing of electric guitars, then basically that's metal music. So we have Ronald James Padavona, known professionally as Ronnie James Dio, who was an American heavy metal singer, songwriter, and composer, as one good example for this. And then we have punk music. So who would not know Avril Lavigne, right? This was developed between 1974 and 1976 in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia. This type of music is a type of rock music genre based on garage rock proto-punk music. So, of course, who among us do not know The Clash? Joe Strummer will always be remembered as one of the leading voices of the burning punk movement, as he fronted the only band that matters in terms of punk music, and that is The Clash. And then we have rap music. So even before rap music was already famous, up until now, And most of our young generations nowadays still love rap music. Why? Primarily because maybe rap music is one good way or tool for singers, artists, or musicians to channel an embedded message through the lyrics of the rap music itself. So it originated among African Americans' inner city street culture. So before, or based on tradition, rap music was oftentimes used in the streets of the United States by African Americans. And this was considered as a mainstream type and is popular among people of all ages and background around the world. So, of course, we know that one of the famous rappers in the world is Eminem, by name of Marshall Bruce Mathers III. He is an American rapper, record producer, and actor who was known as one of the most controversial because most of his lyrics contain strong messages. And he is also considered to be one of the best selling artists of the early 21st century. And then we also have reggae music. This one is oftentimes confused with jazz music, but reggae music is more upbeat compared to the jazz music because this one has the influence of Jamaican culture. So this arose from Jamaica in the late 1960s. This type of music refers to a style that developed from ska and rock steady. So the most popular reggae musician or artist is of course Bob Marley, by name Robert Nesta Marley, who was a Jamaican singer-songwriter whose thoughtful ongoing distillation of early ska, rocksteady, and reggae musical forms blossomed in the 1970s. And then we also have R&B, or also called as rhythm and blues. This is a genre of popular music that originated in African American communities in the 1940s. So oftentimes this type of music is soulful, meaning when singers sing this kind of music, they really feel the emotions behind the lyrics. So one good example for a singer who sings R&B is Alicia Keys, whose original name is Alicia Augelio Cook, an American singer-songwriter, pianist, and actress who achieved enormous success in the early 2000s with her blend of R&B and soul music. And then we also have rock music. This is a popular music that evolved from rock and roll and pop music during the mid and late 1960s. So, of course, one best example for this is Freddie Mercury, whose original name is Farrokh Bulsara, a British rock singer and songwriter. So, to end this discussion, I want to put the context of these musical art forms in the Philippines. How about in the Philippines? What are the most popular types of music being played by musicians or artists or by multimedia? Or what types of music are the current generations more engrossed in? So maybe most of us would say that it's definitely the pop music of other countries. So we oftentimes listen more to Western music or other Asian music, such as K-pop. However, here in the Philippines, there are actually a number of these musical forms that we can appreciate. And these musical art forms are a representation of the Philippine culture, tradition, and heritage. One good example for this is the indigenous music that we have. For example, the playing of a gong for a specific culture, let's say in a Muslim culture or in the different cultures of Banawe or Kalinga Apayao. So indigenous music there is definitely a representation of the culture of that specific community or locality. So indigenous music is also a projection of our identity as Filipinos. And then we also have Hispanic influence music, for example, kundiman or darondalia. So we also have a lot of musical art forms which were heavily influenced by the Spanish colonization. So for example, when we dance cha-cha, okay, or when we play rondalia. So all of these are heavily influenced by the Spanish culture. And of course, we have our own Pinoy pop music, right? So we have pop singers here such as Sara Geronimo. And then we also have hip hop music. Now, most of our modern generation singers or artists are more on the production of hip hop music just to go with the flow of what's going on in Korea or in other Western countries. And then, of course, we have choir music or a cappella. So we have a number of great and infamous choir groups in the Philippines. For example, the Philippine Madrigal Singers. Okay. And then we also have our own version of Pinoy reggae and jazz music. And then we have our own electrical music as well. So if you know, we have a lot of Filipinos who became popular in playing electric guitars and other forms of electronic music. And then we also have lastly rap music or the flip top. Who would not know? Abra and other rappers that we have. So we have Francis M or Francis Magalona, who was one of the legacies of rap music or flip top industry in the Philippines. Now, the reason why I am introducing this as part or as the conclusion part of my lecture is for us to realize, most especially you students or the youth, to realize that we also need to give more importance to our own Filipino musical art forms. Well, for some of us, or for most youth or the younger generations, they would say that Filipino music is somewhat like sometimes corny or it doesn't have good quality compared to the rest of the musical art forms produced in other countries, such as in Korea. And we could not also blame these individuals for their fanaticism or fandom of other pop cultures such as K-pop because it depends also on the taste or the likes of someone who's really into music or listening to music. But one point here is that we need to appreciate and proliferate musical art forms here in the Philippines, most especially those that truly reflect our identity as Filipinos. For example, the indigenous or the folk music that we have. If we continually use this and introduce this to the next generation, I think it will be easier for us to pass on also our own identity as Filipinos. So that is where I will end my discussion on music and musical art forms in the Philippines. Should you have any queries regarding this video discussion, please feel free to post them on our open forum. Thank you.